This is the continuation of part 1 of the Grand Canyon, the overlay, the trees, the floods, and Babel. In researching the Grand Canyon, I got into the floods, and just let me show you this real quick here. And what I'm showing you here is, I'm sure some of you guys have seen the videos that the world trees they tap into under the water, the living waters, the structured water. It's actually called aqua. It's not water, it's plasma-like. And that's what the world trees pulled up. And it's the same thing that the tree sap is lava, right? It's pressurized, gets heated up, and it's lava. So when I was looking at the Grand Canyon, I was trying to see if the floods had affected it, the deluge, all kinds of stuff. And I've been working, if you guys have seen any of my previous flood video, you know that I explain how each flood happened. And essentially what I talk about is how in each successive flood, they start off with in the first flood, they don't cut all the trees down. There's 4 stages of when they cut the trees down, and they cause 4 different floods. As the floods go on, the very last one, the one from the Bible, the Noah flood, that was the very last cutting of the trees. So we know that we have 577 world trees now, right? So they did this in stages, okay? So what about the floods? Mainstream geology says oceans have been here forever. You ready to find out how the oceans got here? But we know that's not true. We found pyramids under the Caribbean, sunken cities off Japan, whole civilizations drowned beneath the seas. That means the oceans are recent. They formed in stages. Every time they cut more of the world trees, more water surged up from the deep. The roots of those trees were connected to fountains of the deep, the underground reservoirs. When the trees were cut, those conduits bled and water rushed upward. 4 different times this happened, 4 different floods. The first flood was only about 20% of the trees that were cut. About 80% still stood. Earth was mostly land, with only small inland seas and Great Lakes forming. So this is why I have this map laid out like this. So the first flood, there's no there's no floods, right? There's not a whole lot of water. Second flood, you can just see, and this isn't exactly as it is, obviously. I'm just trying to show you how it keeps getting a little bit more, 80% of trees, and I'm going through here, and then now I'm showing you kind of the stages here of how the oceans are forming, and it's based upon the depth of the basin that we sit in. And if you look at a flat Earth map, and I want you to look at this flat Earth map. See how it's cratered? So as we cut the world trees down, this area fills up with water. Do you see what I'm talking about here? This is how it happens. We have 577 trees all over the world. They cut them. The water starts spewing out, right? They did it in 4 different stages. This fills up. That's why there's pyramids on the Caribbean, the bottom of the Caribbean. That's why there's literally pyramids there. So the second flood, 40% of the trees are gone, 60% left. Proto-oceans begin to appear, larger seas swallowing coastlines. The third flood, half the trees are cut, half remaining. Oceans expanded drastically, entire civilizations drowned. The fourth flood, the big one, remembered as Noah's flood, finished the job. The last 50% of the trees were cut, leaving none remaining. The final release of water filled the basins completely. That's when modern oceans appeared. And I backed this up with a simple timeline chart. On one axis, the floods 1 through 4. On the other, the percentage of world trees still standing. You can see it step down. First, 80% remains. Second, 60%. Third, 50%. Fourth, 0. Each drop corresponds to the oceans expanding. The more trees cut, the more water above ground, until finally Earth became the drowned world we know today. But here's the thing. Those trees didn't just vanish. When they fell, their trunks and crowns collapsed into mountain ranges, the Rockies, the Andes, the Himalayas, jagged crowns of fallen giants. The oceans are the basins where the roots once stood and bled water. Mountains and oceans aren't opposites. They are the fingerprints of the same event, the cutting of the world trees. And then comes Babel. All right, now I'm thinking of timelines, okay? Remember how I talked about the vitrification, right? That has a quick decay rate, right? So I knew that it could be as young as 10,000 years all the way to 100,000 years. But what do we know that happened about 10,000 years ago? The Great Deluge, right? So I knew that the cutting of the Grand Canyon coincided right around the exact same time as a deluge from a time frame standpoint. And that tied together some other things, okay? By the time of Nimrod, the trees were gone. All the world trees cut now, right? The last were cut in the final flood. The natural ladder to heaven no longer stood, so Nimrod tried to build a synthetic one, the Tower of Babel. It wasn't just a tall building, it was a man-made axis mundi, an artificial resonance ladder meant to phase shift humanity back through the realms. Get them back up and down the realms. But it failed. Why? Because resonance requires unity. If the people had stayed in one language, one frequency, they could have phase locked the tower into the heavens. But the confusion of tongues was a deliberate frequency scramble. It wasn't just about words, it was vibrational fragmentation. Without unity, the tower couldn't hold. And that's the pattern. Cut the trees and the vertical breaks. Drop the overlay and we're trapped in the lower chakras. Try to rebuild the ladder and the single gets jammed. Floods expand the oceans and the scars become permanent. But here's the hope. Even though the external trees were cut, the internal tree remains, the spine, the heart axis, the breath coherence. That's our living ladder now. We recreate the vertical axis inside ourselves first. Heart resonance, clean language, group unity. That's the new node tech. Once that's alive in us, we can build structures, devices, star forts, and tuning chambers that harmonize with it again. Organic first, tech second. That's why this story matters. It's not just about the ancient trees or old floods. It's about the overlay we're living under, the scars beneath our feet, and the ladder that still lives inside us. And so what did we discover tonight so far? So we discovered the Grand Canyon was literally, it's literally like a tree stump ripped out of the ground almost. Like the whole landmass area there, like ripped out of the ground, and it was cut all the way in, like deep into the earth because these world trees were like organisms. I know trees are organisms, but they were like blood, like us organisms, like flesh and blood organisms. And so we're going to get into some pretty big cosmic scales, but I need you to visualize. So let's say you were looking underneath a redwood or a sequoia tree, and you were as big as a microorganism. You would still be nowhere near as small as we are to the top of these trees. 25,500 miles. In a globe model, they say the Earth is like 4,500 miles around, right? We know that's not right. On a flat Earth model, from side to side, I believe it's around 39,000 miles. So that would be like a tree that went, these trees were as tall as the circumference or the diameter of the area that we live in. And so I need you guys to really think about these scales here, because in the next videos, we are going to jump into some serious stuff. I'm going to throw some serious math at you, and I'm going to show you actually where we live. And it's going to get crazy. I'm going to bust out star maps. I'm going to do all kinds of stuff. But once I show you everything, it's going to open up. You're going to see how magical everything really is. And it might be a little scary, but it's going to sound crazy, and you're probably not going to believe it. But I'm going to show it to you anyways. Hope you have a great night. Oh, working on the book that will be coming out soon. Have a great night. Namaste.